challenging. So I will do the best I can. My name is Betsy, and I created Betsy's Best Bar None. And the original name was just Bar None, but we did the trademark search when we were going public. It had been used too much, so I had to throw in my name in a very quick moment, so it ended up being more personal. So my story of my business is I retired from a 30-year career as a nurse midwife, delivering babies, and transitioned to becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And my training for that was in the Oregon Department of Corrections. And I spent 2 years at Columbia River Correctional Institute, working with the gentleman there as in mindfulness classes and smart recovery classes, and giving them medication. Basically, that's what I was learning to do. And I ended up staying there for a couple of years and teaching classes every week, and grew very, very, very fond of my people. They became very dear to me, and I learned more and more about their stories. And I decided, after learning about once a felon, always a felon, and realizing that people had very, very hard knocks. That's the irony of this event, is out of hard knocks came my business for other people. Learning about their stories compelled me to want to move in a different direction. And so I decided to create something that I could hopefully put people to work, transitioning out of jail and prison once we got an infrastructure that was strong enough. So I spent 2 years creating an energy bar, and it's actually a whole food bar, and I did that only because I deeply value good, nutritious, organic food. So my value was met there. And I worked for 2 years on the product, and finally came up with something we actually launched at the Portland Marathon Expo to the athletes, just to see what would happen. It was just a cold call, just let's give it a try. And it was very successful. And at that time, I had 2 gentlemen who were in my classes in prison who had just released, and they came and manned the booth at the expo. And I felt it was really important to start the energy where the energy truly started. And it was an absolute success. It was wonderful. People loved the product. And then I continued on to refine the recipe for almost another year. There were certain digestive issues that I found was strange, and I wanted to be as good as it could possibly be. So down the long road of sourcing ingredients and sourcing people to help me source those ingredients, and the Food Innovation Center, affiliated with Oregon State University, Sarah Massoni, who has guided me the entire step of the way, every step of the way, excuse me. We progressed, and after another almost a year of refinement of the recipe, I got into our first store in June of 2012 in Portland, one of the co-ops, and the co-ops quickly filled. And then I made a cold call on the floor of the Pearl Whole Foods and just had some product with me and asked this random person, I didn't know which department he worked in, how do I get somebody to try my bars? He said, well, let me try them. So he tried them, he said, oh my God, can you please bring more so I can share them for my staff? So I brought more, and that was the beginning of getting to the Pacific Northwest of Whole Foods, which we're percolating very, very well now. We just got into new seasons, so we're moving. So from a much deeper level for me, this is really a story of not being afraid to try to do something. Excuse me. I knew nothing about business. Nothing. Delivering babies and handing out medication and getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, I was absolutely oblivious to the business process, or just the process of trying to put pieces together. And I continued to work at it, and it rendered a wonderful, delicious, very, very healthy product, and it has morphed several times due to problems with accessing ingredients whose fluctuation in the marketplace is sketchy. So I've had to make decisions I never in the world would have thought, oh my gosh, making such a decision to me was like, can you believe I did this? So it was really the whole thing is quite random, really, but yet focused on the people coming out of prison. And really, it's been very challenging for me to have that mission and not have the infrastructure to hire people. However, with that challenge. I did hire 2 people coming out of prison. I was able to, and one the next day she found a full-time job elsewhere, which is fabulous. And then one of the really hard knocks for me is I hired another person, and because I was borrowing the facility where we were working, it wasn't mine to really have things take place that weren't necessarily appropriate in the situation. So the person who came to work, who was an excellent, excellent worker for us, she unfortunately, her family came at lunch every time and created very big problems in the foyer of the building where we worked. So the very big lesson for me is I can't have this blossom until I have a place to do it, until the process gets to make its way organically into giving people space and time to have their problems and still plug away with the system. So, you know, when I worked, I also worked in the women's medium security prison at Coffee Creek, and I learned so much there about, you know, people making mistakes, which we've all made mistakes, and most of us don't land in prison. But probably a lot of us could have landed in prison if somebody found out what we did, you know, it's most likely. I did a couple of days in juvie when I was a kid, you know, for running away from my house, and I got a taste of being in a room for, like, what, 4 days or something. So it wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't prison. It wasn't the big house, so to speak. But learning about the basic idea that we assume that people know better just because they know better. Most people, a lot of people aren't exposed to what's better. They don't have that ability to make a wise choice. So they make the choice that makes sense to them. And then to take it a step further and be in the prison system where you are told to sit there and think about what you did and not really gain any insight into what you did and not have a sense of how to go about life when you get out there. So my desire is for these bars to take off and be manned by a whole group of people coming out of prison or jail while I get to get involved in prison reform and restorative justice, which is really my main intention, especially if I can stay unafraid and realize that I live in the paradox. If I don't do this, I can't do this, and if I can't do this, I can't do this. So I'm always trying to move forward, and another hard knock for me, I guess I used up all my retirement money from being a midwife for 30 years to fund this adventure. And I also closed my private practice because I was too busy doing the bars. And I had the good fortune of starting Social Security in January. So I could pay my bills, you know, which you can't, it's like, wow, it really worked, the system worked. So I've had also incredible good fortune with having so many people support me along the way in terms of just snippets of information. And it seems that whenever something comes up, the door opens. It definitely opens for me, always, always. It doesn't help sometimes when I'm not sure which door I'm going after, but typically it's worked. It's worked over and over and over again. And now we are in the precipice of looking for investors, actually, to take us national. We are doing really, really well with our product locally and in Seattle and California. And I'm now at the point of seeking assistance, which is really challenging for me. That's another very hard knock for me. Being at this age and thinking about owing people money is really not easy, but I see that it has to happen in order to grow. And I hope that I will have the good fortune to align with people who can have an open, flexible perspective of what is housed in this project. And I hope that we can see change in society with mistakes and know that we can all make them and give people a second chance over and over and over again. Okay. I kind of envision the idea, you know, when people get Academy Awards, and you say, and I'd like to thank, I'd like to thank my family and my friends for tasting enough bars to just go crazy, you know, over and over. For Sarah Massoni and Tribe at the Food Innovation Center for Nathan, who is my little business friend, for every single person who has tried these bars and loved them, for every receiving person in the back of Whole Foods where all the compost crap is brewing and it smells so bad, to walk out on the floor and be welcomed. It has been the experience of community in the biggest sense, and that is what I feel when I think of people coming out of prison who typically don't have one person, not one person, and they're also shunned by that one person. So it's a movement. It's more of a movement, really, that I support, and I thank everyone that I'm able to have the pleasure of speaking with right now.